So Team USA won gold in the 2024 Olympics after beating Serbia in the semifinals and in France in the finals. And there's certainly a lot to talk about and take away from those last two games. And what exactly does this mean moving forward for Team USA? How eventful, impactful, monumental this run was in particular. But before we do that, gotta give you a heads up. Unfortunately, not gonna be able to show you too many, if any, Olympic clips at all because they're coming through and they're taking people's whole channels down. So we're not gonna do that here in the low post. Unfortunately, the Olympics, they're a bit more strict than NBA, but I still wanted to talk about a lot because there are a lot of talking points that we witnessed over the past 2 weeks of basketball over in France. Now, with that being said, how exactly did we get here? Because the 2024 men's team is something special. It's a bit different. And that's the reason why people are calling them Avengers, because we got the old school, the faces of the league over the past decade stepped up to the plate and finally decided to compete. KD normally does it himself, but Curry, for the first time, walks away with gold. And LeBron, for the first time, I believe since 2012, also stepped up to the plate and involved himself in the Olympics team, as well as a slew of other players such as Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, Halliburton, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo. The one bigger surprise before we got here was Joel Embiid. Many people thought he was going to play for France or maybe even another team, but no, he decided to be on Team USA and be a part of a historic team. And all of them, in all honesty, played a huge role in how we got to this moment, even the ones that didn't really play that much playing time, in large part because I think it's great to just sit back and just look at how talented the roster was. And what prompted the conglomerate of talent to get together was a comment made by Noah Lyles. So a year ago, Noah Lyles, as people may infamously know, he made a comment about how he gets irritated and the thing that hurts him the most, just extra sassy from you, Noah. But the thing that hurts him the most is the fact that he turns on the TV, he watches the NBA Finals, and he sees world champion across their head. Now, of course, this went into this semantics and technicality debate on NBA Twitter that then prompted a bunch of comments from NBA players, and that's how exactly we got here. My thoughts on the whole issue, and I think I talked about this before, is not on this channel, definitely not on this channel, my other channels, but in short, technically speaking, what Noah Lyles is saying is true. It is unfortunate that, there are some people that refer to NBA teams as world champions because technically speaking, they're not going up against the world, even if they are the best team in the world. So if you're going to play the technicality game, yes, technically speaking, that is true, even though we do know the Boston Celtics this year, well, outside of this Olympics team, the Boston Celtics this year was going to be the best team in the world. So technically speaking, understand where he's coming from, but if we're going to play the technical game, technically speaking, you don't see world champions on anybody's heads. The NBA doesn't refer to their champions as world champions. Adam Silver does not say world champion when he's handing over the trophy, if we're going to do that. Some teams absolutely do refer to themselves as world champions, but nevertheless, you're lying regardless. You're just wrong. You're ignorant. And that's the reason why a lot of people call you loud and arrogant and a peasant. Yikes. So because of Noah Lyles, as well as, to be fair, USA not finishing as high as people thought in the FIBA games, which then prompted this nasty conversation about how the world is catching up to USA, which was really, really disgusting. I mean, we sent over Austin Reeves. I don't know why y'all thought that we were going to get anywhere near close, and y'all thought that was actually going to be real representation of who we were from USA, but here we are. All these players committed, which then formed the Avengers, as they are being called, the 2024 men's team, and basically went through the tournament, dominating every single last team except for the last two games. And they're the most interesting games, and that's where I want to actually center a lot of my focus towards, because the things I saw against Serbia and France, very, very interesting. First and foremost, Steph Curry. I don't even know where to begin with Steph. I mean, it looked like 2016 Steph. It looked like 2015 Steph. I'm pretty sure many of you are aware of what Steph Curry did, but if you don't, you missed out on some mastery. I mean, some of the greatest basketball he has played in quite some time. Steph Curry in Olympic basketball, 10-minute quarters. I mean, barely playing 30-plus minutes. Against Serbia, put up 36 points. Against France, 24 points. In particular, in the fourth quarter, in a final game against France, he puts up 12 points, 4 straight possessions where he's dropping bombs from behind the arc, and they were disgusting. They were nasty. His last one was oh so special, being double teamed by Evan Fournier and Nicholas Batum, and still knocked it down, fading off to the side. It was one of the moments. If you missed it, I really do. I hate it for you. I ain't gonna lie. I really, really do hate it for you. But even in the Serbia game, he was going crazy when he put up 36 points. I believe he started off with 14 of the first 15 points from Team USA in that first quarter, and there was a huge reason why we were able to win both of these games. I mean, legitimately speaking, when we were going through these moments of like, who's going to close these games? Give it to LeBron, give it to KD, and don't get me wrong, both of them actually did close out games for us throughout this tournament, especially in the showcase games. They were exhibition games. I said it right this time. But nevertheless, we shown the ability to close with many other players. Curry was special. Curry was something else. He was something spectacular to see. He played like 2016 Curry. I mean, he was shooting shots that reminded the entire world why they fell in love with him roughly a decade ago. I mean, that's what Curry did, even though he did not win the MVP because he wasn't this consistent and this great all throughout the tournament. In the two games where we needed it the most, close, the 2 games that were the closest, he showed up the biggest. And it was fantastic to see for him to put up those type of points in the last 2 games. Crazy. Then we have KD to start out the Olympics, went almost perfect from the field out the gate. His impact was immediately felt because he didn't play any showcase games, so people were wondering what he's going to look like. Came out the gate, highly impactful. The shot creation was a difference maker on what Team USA looked like in half-court sets and down a stretch of games where they needed to make it the most. He was KD. He's Kevin Durant. Like, he does this for a living. When you strip away a lot of his responsibilities and just tell him to go get a bucket, he can go get a bucket. He can go get a bucket, all right? But the one thing that people are not going to talk enough about KD on, and that is his defense. Defensively, I was highly impressed on what Kevin Durant was doing. I mean, he was ball hawking. He was picking up players at half court. He was being a POA. He was roaming, switching, rotating. KD was very impressive defensively, and with him basically being 7 feet tall, matter of fact, not even say basically, the one thing that we always take away from these type of events is when KD stands next to someone else, and you're like, nigga, stop lying about your height, all right? Just stop. You're not 6'9", 6'10", whatever you be putting down, bro, you're not. You are clearly 7 feet tall. Like, let's call it enough. Enough is enough, right? And with KD being legitimately 7 feet tall, his ability to roam, play passing lanes, rotate over, being able to legitimately guard, and I do mean this, 1 through 4. And actually, let me just say 1 through 5, because he actually spent some real time defending Jokic in that Serbia game. And actually, let me speak about that, because KD's presence on the floor was a massive difference maker. We were getting our ass handed to us against Serbia in those first 3 quarters. It looks really, really bad. There was a moment against Serbia where Team USA was down by 17 points early on in the second quarter, chipped away at it, and in the fourth quarter turned up. A lot of people are going to talk about the shot making. A lot of people are going to talk about KD in the clutch, but not enough people are talking about our defense and being able to scheme and counter what they were doing, because Serbia walked into that game and had a game plan. Slow us down, fouling us in transition, making sure we weren't getting easy buckets. Then when we were in the half court, slowed down, run a zone against us, matchup zone, rotating over, being able to clog the lane, shrink the floor even more than what it actually was. And we struggle with that mightily. It's a huge reason why Anthony Davis and Bam, that lineup didn't look that great, because they were running a zone. It's the reason why Anthony Edwards didn't look that great in that game, because they were running a zone, and non-shooters or players who handle the ball who do not understand the table set, initiate offense, make certain reads and passes, they don't look great in zones. That is the only game in the entire tournament where Serbia's bench outscored our bench. Be very mindful. For most of the tournament, there was actually moments in the showcase games and in the actual Olympics where Team USA's bench looked better than the starting lineup, and Team USA's bench looked better than the entire opposing team's roster, right? So for there to be a game where our bench got outscored, very concerning, but a lot had to do with the zone. And then what they did offensively, which is magnificent, great execution, was operate around Jokic. Every single set Serbia was running basically involved Jokic with his ball screening, DHOs, which kind of puts you in a very tough situation. You go under the screens, they were making their shots, some of which was BS, but making their shots. You go over the screens, Jokic can pop out. He didn't make any threes, but still was a threat, stretched out the floor a little bit more and took the big out of the lane to rebound. Always impactful. Or they'll play a little 2-man game and Jokic pump, drive into the lane. Jokic did a nasty Euro, actually got caught with an and one and finished it too. It's kind of crazy. And moreover, if you keep trying to fight over screens, trying to play the cat and mouse game with the screen, eventually he's going to force you to just switch, because that's the easiest way to defend. But as great as Jrue Holiday was in that game defensively, you can't rely too much on switches, because you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because now Jokic is being guarded by a guard. So the counter behind it was, hey, KD, you go guard Bogey, because Bogdanovic was like killing us. LeBron, Embiid, you guard Jokic. LeBron still being one of the, I don't know how LeBron do it, but genuinely speaking, LeBron was like an actual option to defend the greatest player in the world right now in Jokic. And every single time they set a screen or a DHO with Jokic, we don't have to fight over it no more, just switch. And so now KD was guarding Jokic, had a couple of possessions where it looked kind of shaky, but for the most part, he utilized his length, his athleticism, his great timing, and was able to defend Jokic in very timely possessions. And then finally, you have LeBron. Bro, 39 years old and won the MVP in the Olympics. Can very well make an argument that LeBron throughout his entire tournament looked like the best player in the world. I think Jokic and Giannis make very, very great cases. Embiid, not so much. And LeBron was the most consistent, most impactful on a game-to-game basis, on the most talented roster the world has seen since 2012. Every single game, LeBron was out there and he played at a really high level. Gotta give it up for LeBron, KD, and Curry. The things they did were sensational. It was fantastic. Another huge props I have to give a lot of credit to, Devin Booker. My goodness, give that man his flowers. I know for a fact, after watching these Olympics, everyone cannot come in, go from being the star or a superstar on their team in the NBA and feel comfortable being a role player amongst other great players. But Devin Booker stepped up to the task, played that role better than really anyone else on this team outside of like maybe Anthony Davis. You can argue Bam as well. Made his shots coming off screens, rotated the ball, understand how to maneuver off ball, and defensively picked up the Olympic mantra of the defensive type of energy that they're looking for. Picked up players full court, half court, ball hawking, gave great effort on the defensive side of the floor, played the pseudo Klay Thompson role that we saw him play back in the day with the Olympics. And because how great he was, I don't think anybody thought on their bingo board card when they were trying to get 5 in a row who was going to be the 5th man in the rotation when it came to clutch time, closing time. No one did not think that it was going to be Devin Booker. I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought it was going to be Jason Tatum, certainly probably Kawhi Leonard if he was still available and playing. Yeah, I give a lot of credit to D-Book. I was actually very impressed that he was able to fill that role, and it was needed because I look at the bench and I wasn't too confident about really anybody else being able to fulfill that role, and they desperately needed it. Got to give a huge shout out to D-Book. Then we have the bench players, Ant, Bam, Anthony Davis. I think those three were really great. I do believe that AD was the most consistent out of the bunch, so much so that he inserted himself in that 5-man rotation to close out games instead of Embiid. He's definitely more mobile defensively. Because of that, he's way more switchable than Embiid. He can keep up with the tempo, defend in space, which are things that you need in Olympic basketball, and he really separated himself in those regards, as well as just being a pure play finisher. You don't have to give AD the ball. He just jab, stepping up fake, pump fake, trying to get a foul. He doesn't slow down the pace at all. He runs with the flow. Great complementary piece to any scoring guard, ball handler like LeBron, like a KD, like a Curry. So he fit in perfectly with what this team needed down a stretch of games. And Ant had really great moments. Still a lot of growth and maturity that he has to do with his ball handling, decision making as a guard. But he had his moment as well. I want to say it was against Brazil. He went ridiculous, crazy. He looks great out there at times. And then you had Bam. I mean, Bam had great moments during this stretch. Of course, defensively, he was fantastic. Had a game where he was knocking down his threes also, which was definitely a surprise. And I'll be honest with you, to the NBA world, if Bam comes back in about a month and a half shooting threes, we're cooked. Now that's a legit top 15 player if Bam is making threes. Luckily, Miami, not too good of an organization right now. And everybody else more or less kind of did their role. Jrue Holiday fit in really well, despite the fact some people were kind of questioning him. Tyrese Halliburton didn't play too many minutes. And then obviously the two elephant in the rooms, Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum. Now, to be fair to Embiid, I just don't see Embiid as someone who is best suited for this type of a role. He's not someone who complements as well as others. He's not someone who's going to play more of a role player, as well as the fact that asking him to defend in space, he gave some effort, actually a lot of effort in the Serbia game in that second half. But outside of that, the effort was inconsistent, and it's a huge reason why he struggled and even sat some of the games as well. And then we got a whole Jason Tatum situation. I'm actually going to talk about that at the end of the video because we got to really get to the bottom of the JT thing. But regardless, winning gold for this team meant a lot, not only because there was a lot of chatter around the world about all these other countries potentially catching up, but more importantly, and I think the historic significance of this is that this is easily one of the most talented rosters that has ever been put together in basketball history, undeniably. And a huge reason for that has a lot to do with the feature of Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and LeBron James and what they were able to string along. And I want to take a pause break for a second and just congratulate those three men, because as someone who grew up with Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan, I do believe that I took a lot of that era of basketball for granted. And once it's gone, bro, it's gone. So for the people out there who are younger than me, who grew up with these three players, please take the time out for the remainder of the summer and acknowledge and appreciate the run that these three gentlemen are on, because it's been a hell of a decade. I mean, I don't think that anyone could have asked for a better run from these three players, regardless of how you may feel about them hopping on one team and another and them underperforming, whatever you want to say. The fact that these three can perform at this level, at the stage of their careers that they're at, all north of 35, all all of them put in a crazy 10 plus, 12 plus, 13 plus, LeBron 20 plus year stretch, and for them to still look like the 3 best players on the most talented roster that we have seen, that's crazy. What exactly does this mean for Team USA? Because what I saw with this Olympic roster is the same problems that I see with the NBA right now, and it is the over-dependence of LeBron, KD, and Curry. They can be the face of the league, they can be dominant, they can sell tickets, be entertaining, and be great figureheads for what this league stands for, but they can't do it forever. Like, they just can't. It was great to see, but it was pretty disappointing to see some of the younger players not step up in the way in which I thought they were going to be able to. Anthony Edwards had his moments, and Ant is still young. He has a lot of room to grow, and I do believe in the next 4 years he's going to look great. There is a reason why Halliburton didn't play in these Olympics, right? There's a reason why Bam was unplayable at times. There's a reason why Tatum got DMPs. There's a reason why, as great as Embiid was, his fit on a roster like this doesn't work well. And don't get me wrong, Chet coming up 4 years later, what he gonna look like, who knows? Shout out to Cooper Flag. He gonna be in the NBA 4 years down the line, but it will be his first Olympic showing. After watching some of these young players, I can definitely tell. Some of the NBA guys, the USA guys, with the way that they grow up, play basketball, it's definitely a little bit different. There is a learning curve you gotta hit. So regardless of how great you may believe Cooper Flag is going to be in 4 years, it's still going to be a learning curve for him to play with a bunch of players he never played with before. Just looking at the rest of the world, I'm not saying that they're catching up, but I do believe that the NBA's talent at the top level, it doesn't show signs of being as overwhelmingly dominant like it once was before. And with the world also becoming better, it's a huge reason why the Dream Team and how that team was constructed and pieced together, why they were able to go around the world and just beat the brakes out of everybody. Like, there's a reason why that happened. There's a reason why in 96, Dream Team 2, they were able to beat the brakes off everyone, because not only are you featuring literally some of the greatest basketball players of all time in their relative primes on the roster, MJ, Pippen, Shaq on Dream Team 2, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, like literally some of the greatest players, but the rest of the world were just, it ain't even, there's no such thing as a Jokic back then. There's no such thing as a Giannis back then. There's not enough NBA caliber players around the world back then, while also some of the most talented players that the game has ever seen playing on the same roster. While a lot of that is teetering in another direction, the world is catching up where, unless Ant takes a generational leap, I don't think that Ant is going to reach the heights of a KD or a Kobe Bryant. And so it is a great feeling to see Curry, KD, LeBron represent the country, represent their nation, go out there, win gold, and go bananas, go crazy. But it's also a realization that a lot of this is all coming to a conclusion, and the question that many of us have been asking since last year was, who's going to step up? Who's going to take the next step in the mantle of being the representation for USA basketball? I am kind of concerned on what exactly happens next 4 years down the line, but don't want to be too much of a worrywart. Definitely love what I saw from this team. It was great watching basketball for another month, and what we witnessed is history. Shout out to Team USA, proving the world that basketball is still dominant with the United States, winning again with another gold, and here's for another many more years of dominance down the line. With that being said, I'm gonna stop this video, and in the next video we upload right after this will be the Jason Tatum video, because I have a lot to talk about this, because this is a lot. There's a lot to talk about. But see you then.